Well, it's great to, as an earlier speaker had mentioned, this is my first trip also to this beautiful city of yours, and it's great to be here. I have had some dealings up at Oshkosh when I was in the weapons systems acquisition business in Marine Corps headquarters. So I'm a little bit familiar with the state, but I'm here today to share with you the thoughts and concerns that we who are in mission readiness now have. There are about 125 of us, who are in the Mission Readiness Executive Advisory Committee, if you will. And we've published this pamphlet, Mission Readiness, Military Leaders for Kids, and you'll find a lot of what I make reference to today is to be found here. And we have several additional copies of this for those of you who may not have seen it. And I know it has circulated in some circles here in Wisconsin, so perhaps those of you who don't have a copy might see Jeff over next to the chief, and you'll find that he can hand you out one, or if we run out, we'll take your name and have it mailed back to you. The staggering numbers, and what I really have to say is, contained in this report, only today, 25% of young men and women, 17 to 24, only 25% are eligible for service in the United States Armed Forces, any one of them. To me, that's extremely sobering, 25%. Now, if you stop and take a look at Wisconsin, as the Secretary had said earlier, you've made some real headway. Wisconsin has really done some great things, and when you go through a state-by-state evaluation, Wisconsin is higher in scale than many of the others. For example, in your issue of high school graduation rates, you have only about 11% attrition. 11% of Wisconsin kids don't graduate. On time anyway. The only state in the union that beats you in that regard is Vermont, and Vermont has 1 percentage point lower than you. And I think that's pretty enviable, and you ought to feel real good about the fact that you lead 48 states. On the other hand, when you get to overweight or obesity, your numbers aren't quite so compelling. They're not bad, but they're not quite as compelling. Overweight in the United States, the average is 32%, by the way. In Wisconsin, you're at 28%. So you're getting close to the national average. But you're far above Mississippi, where the percentage is 44%. And that's pretty sobering, too. Crime. The chief will probably mention this, but your crime rate here is, for every 39 individuals in the state of Wisconsin, one has either been in jail, in prison, is on parole, or finds himself in a serious misdemeanor. That's not a bad number when you think of Georgia, where the number is 1 in every 13 citizens. So you must be doing some good things in the world of law enforcement, and also in the world of preparing children to be important citizens. Now, if these numbers get your attention, just think of, for a minute, if you had a daughter who was sitting in the cockpit of an F-18 fighter aircraft, loaded with its ordnance, and she was ready to be catapulted off of an aircraft carrier and carry out a mission. Now, she looks down on the deck, and there she sees a 21 or 22-year-old young sailor or Marine who is responsible for that aircraft's mission readiness. That young person then, from the nose to the tail of that aircraft, has the accountability for its ability to fly. She flies it, but he maintains it. They're both very, very important individuals, as you might suspicion. Now imagine, if you will, as they return their salutes, that instead of the fellow on the deck being what he is, a graduate of Neenah High School or Monroe High School here in Wisconsin, and she a graduate of the University of Wisconsin or Marquette University? These two folks balance off nicely. But what if the fellow on the deck was, in fact, a non-high school graduate who had a few criminal blemishes on his record and, frankly, could read at only the 4th grade level? What do you think that would do to the high confidence that your daughter would have sitting in the cockpit? I don't think it would do her much good. So let me turn then to what can we do about it? Well, first of all, I guess if you're confronted with numbers that don't change, if we cannot change the 25% number and make it grow to 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 nationally, what's going to happen in the armed forces is you're going to have to change the quality standards. You're going to have to reduce the quality. And does that mean that we're going to have the person I described on the deck, the second person I described? I certainly hope not. The other choice is, of course, to shrink the force. Well, if you shrink the force, then you take on the new characteristic of risk. How much risk are we willing to stand? What do we need in our armed forces to, in fact, resist the terrorists and other organizations that really don't like us very much? You can think about that one for a while. But we've got to get, as we look ahead, and technology advances and advances and advances. I mean, I carry around a phone. My wife makes fun of me. She says, Bob, here in Maine, we should have something more advanced than this little cell phone. But it does the job. The fact of the matter is, I suppose I'd have a lot of trouble if I was on active duty today because of technology advances. So you've got to have kids and young people who can cope with that. Now, so does industry and also the public sector. There's no question we're looking for the same individuals. And that 25% number won't hack it when this economy improves. Today, recruiters, re-enlistment persons in all the services are making their numbers. In overwhelming fashion, we have the soldiers, sailors, Marines that we need, and airmen that we need. Will that be true in the future? It won't be unless somebody takes the bull by the horns nationally and follows perhaps the example that the Secretary described here in Wisconsin. So my final message is one that would suggest to you, remember that the armed forces for years has been a source of training, additional technical training for young people who may not be able to afford attendance at a public or private university, not prepared for that. They may be following a vocational path. If they go into services, they can come out and become a member of the Milwaukee Police Department because they've had law enforcement experience. So that's lost. The 75% of those young men and women can't do that today. So we've got to do something about it, and I hope and I really believe that we get this message out, people will take notice and we'll move on from there. Now, I'm often asked in Maine when people from away, people from Wisconsin visit Maine, and they come to Maine and they say, Bob, have you lived your entire life in Maine? And I say, not yet. The point of that is we're kind of older fellas, you know, and we've been a long while in the service and so forth, but we're still willing to serve, to make trips like this and speak out at forums like this and other places. We write op-ed pieces. We're assisted by a very, very competent Washington staff. And we join with all of you who are focused on this problem and can help any ways you can create and imagine for us. So thank you very much, and if you haven't got one, pick up a copy of this.